you create it.
Just go all the way around. Okay. Anyone miss the sign-in sheet? I'll probably have to take it.
I provided like a stress test for theories, but like maybe they can learn from that.
I don't know what the stress is.
Okay, I'll borrow the screen for a second here. All right.
Yeah, we can have a conversation about it.
We're going to go ahead and get started, guys. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll get started. So I was listening to a podcast, and they were it was really funny where there was a participant on the podcast, and she was being interviewed, and she said something about, like, I say this all the time, so this is what kind of got me. It's like, okay, guys, we're going to get started. And she has a T-shirt that says, like, you know, someone said, she's mentioned that guys is not gender neutral. And so they say guys is gender neutral. So she has a T-shirt that says ladies is gender neutral. So, okay, ladies, we're going to get started. All right. What you see on the screen here is our backlog. So we have at the URL, when you see the notes will come out. If you're on the sign-in sheet and you put your email on, you're not already on the mailing list, I'll send you out the notes for this one. If you don't want to be on the mailing list, that's fine. That's cool too. But we have a backlog of, I can't count, over 50 items that are in the backlog. Some are assigned, some are scheduled. So next week, we're going to have another one, which is not our usual. We usually have it every 2 weeks. We haven't had it in a few weeks because, frankly, I was just too busy. So this is what's the story that you just saw?
Well, we had Black Friday was the scheduled one.
Yeah.
And we missed that.
Yeah. But so Little Red Hen, that's what it was. Okay. So yes, everyone knows the Little Red Hen story. It's like the little nursery rhyme or whatever it goes, where, you know, no one wants to like plant the seed. No one wants to like whatever the crop thing that you do. But everyone wants to eat the bread, right? Right now, this is the eating the bread part. But there's a lot that happens before this: setting up speakers, scheduling things, rooming the backlog. You know, all that stuff takes a lot of effort. And the more people we have doing that, the less we're beholden to one person and that person being busy, and then the group doesn't happen, right? I think there's a lot of value that comes out of the group. So if we can have it more consistently as well. So if we miss like a month, which we did, I think we missed about a month, then people start thinking, oh, it's not happening, and they just don't check, right? Or they just don't show up. So the more people we have helping out, the better. So next week we have a container security person coming in to us, Mark, whatever his last name is. He's going to be coming in to give us a presentation on containers and security. He's another one that I found in the community that has government experience and like modern development or orchestration experience as well. So that's really a gem. I mentioned that we were at the conference Nation.js on Friday. So we probably got like 5 or 6 leads for talks that are going to come from that, from different industry experts in different areas. So those are going to be pretty cool as well. We have a SharePoint person coming in because, well, I mean, I say that. We have a SharePoint person coming in February. She's an MVP, and she has another friend that's like a PhD in some data science thing or whatever. So they're going to be giving a presentation on February 2nd. And the backup talk, which I've been promising to do forever, continuous growth, 20 years of experience. Do you have 20 years of experience, or do you have 1 year experience 20 times? Like, there's a big difference in that. So we'll have that one as a backup if something else falls down. I'm gonna promise I will finish that talk this weekend and have it prepared for a backup in case we need to slide something else in. All right. But today we're gonna be talking about the Goddard Private Cloud. And so Mark is going to be our, no, not Mark, sorry, Mike. Mike is going to be our presenter today, so we'll give him our attention.
Quick question, who's got the volume on? Because I can hear an echo. Is it the TV?
It might be me. It might be. Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. But that is a good question, though.
That's what I'm waiting for.
Yeah. If we'd have got the feedback, it would have happened already. So I think I'm the only one that's logged in here to the feed, right?
That's what
I just need to check the feed. And so we shouldn't have that. We shouldn't have too much of a problem. All right. Yeah. Because you need a loading screen to move this thing over. Come on. All right, let's see how this will work. No. Yeah, all right.
Oh.
Hardware backups, great. All right. So, Mike,
Okay.
Go ahead, take it away.
All right. Mike Moore, I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Goddard Private Cloud. It's a prototype effort that is a collaboration between Code 600 and Code 700. As it's a prototype, we're a small team. In fact, all four of us are here right now, Jonathan, Gazelle, and Hoot. Two of us are from Code 600, two of us are from Code 700. And it's just, it started out of the success that Code 600 had with the Adapt cloud, and they want to translate that, 700 sponsoring to try to bring that model to all of Goddard and provide a cloud-first approach to software applications. So we have here with high-level attempt at a definition. We know what it is, right? It's a bunch of stuff stuck together, duct taped together, and then parsed out in consumable pieces. This is what we have in our prototype. We have 2 racks of hardware right now, and we're going to be expanding that pretty soon. So the original hardware for the GPC came out of the Discover HPC cluster, which is takes up 2 large data center rooms in Building 28, and that's the Earth Sciences supercomputer. The model that we're following is we're taking the old hardware off of Discover and turning that into hypervisors for our cloud, and we're using new equipment for the main control servers, the networking, and that type of stuff. So we have a lot of cheap horsepower to add to this in the prototype phase. The idea behind the software we're using, it's OpenStack, which is an open source cloud orchestration software that was originally developed partially by NASA and then went out to be its own open source product. And it has the standard dashboard where you go in, you create your snapshots, you create VMs, you create your storage volumes. It's kind of equivalent to going into an AWS console or the Azure console. Within GPC's prototype, we have an ITAR environment and a non-ITAR environment, currently both housed in Building 28. Our interconnect with the SEN is at 40 gigabits right now, and we're going to be expanding and installing an instance of OpenStack in Building 32's data center, and then rebuilding the prototype with new core components so that we'll have a multi-site install of OpenStack. So OpenStack, it's a open source product supported by Red Hat, some other vendors. As I mentioned, it was a NASA project at the start, and they release every 6 months using an alphabetical code name for the version. The GPC prototype is currently running the M release, which is Mitaka, and Pike is the latest release that our production installation will use. And it's also made up of multiple kind of plug and play components that are also codenamed. It's kind of cute. The core components of OpenStack that we're running right now are Keystone, which is used for authentication, and our Keystone is configured to tie to NDC. So users log into our console using their NDC credentials. We have Nova, which is the VM management component. Glance, which is the image registry, snapshots, that type of stuff. We have Cinder, which is used for block storage, kind of like EBS volumes in AWS. Horizon is the web console, and Neutron provides networking as a service. It provides the configurable security groups firewall for your VMs. A lot of other components that OpenStack has that we're planning to incorporate for the production release of GPC. Those components are telemetry, which is similar to AWS CloudWatch. This lets you track what resources you've used, and it'll simplify billing when this goes from being a free prototype to a production build model. We'll have shared file systems, which is similar to EFS, so that you can share files between instances. If you were to have a WordPress site load balanced, you have to have a shared file system in order to store all the content files. We're going to be adding auto-scaling support, which is similar to AWS auto-scaling groups, container management, because everyone wants containers. In fact, you are bringing people out to talk about containers next week. We're going to be adding load balancers as a service so that you can, in the console, configure your load balancers. We're going to be providing object storage, which is equivalent to AWS S3. And the last two are kind of stretch goals. DNS as a service, which is similar to Route 53, so that your instances can dynamically obtain a DNS record. And then database as a service, which is similar to AWS RDS. So far, most of our users haven't asked for databases, and the few that have can run databases in their VMs on the map so that we can try to be have some parity with the commercial providers.
Not to interrupt you. So that everything except for the last two you said are going to be in the service or provided when you guys go live.
That's the goal, is to have all these working at production release, and DNS as a service and database as a service, not 100% on that. DNS as a service might get bypassed because of NASA policies and difficulty in dealing with dynamic DNS at the agency level, but we want to get that.
I'm curious how you find a Salamander working out for you. You set it up in SSML, and it was really slow, and it didn't have enough. They ended up using Nagios. So,
okay.
I don't know what the maturity was at the time.
Changing weekly.
Okay.
And the Salamander API itself is completely deprecated. It's like gone.
Oh, okay.
So the way it works in Pike and later is you have the Salamander agent is still hanging on, and it's running on all of your your hypervisor nodes, but it's writing the net directly to a time series database. So it's a lot more efficient now. We're hoping this will work out.
I guess
Sounds like it's changed a lot.
And there's other components to that telemetry ecosystem, right?
That's correct. There's 4 or 5. It is a bit hairy.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's simpler, but I do think it's working better than it used to.
But that maturity kind of gives you that's fairly accurate. Yeah. Ages of stability of it.
To be honest, I mean, we don't have it 100% implemented. We have the compute agent running in our Pike test rack. We have the time series database running. That's about all we've gotten to so far.
Yes, Andre, back to your question. This is the list that we've compiled. If you or other potential users need certain capabilities, certain functions, holler.
Yeah,
We're very malleable at this point. We have a huge team, as Mike has pointed out, working on it.
Gotcha.
We're willing to take orders.
Yeah, I was really interested in the container service because I think we talked about that when we met before. So I was just looking it up and seeing how that compares with Kubernetes and the offerings that are coming out now. And the way they're describing it here is that Zoom functionality doesn't compete with Kubernetes. It's more of a basic CRUD sort of thing. So it's interesting. I was wondering.
They just introduced a new one.
Yeah.
So there's now a competitor to Zoom for doing container management for OpenStack. It's
Okay.
that ecosystem is changing rapidly.
Yeah.
Because OpenStack is trying to compete with Kubernetes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, the topic containers is huge. We're pushing for containers on our HPC cluster. And there's a lot of interest and pushback and fright.
Yeah,
all going on at the same time.
It's a useful tool, but the landscape is still kind of moving around. Security doesn't like that. I know that. So.
Wow, that was going to be my question. Is this already FedRAMP compliant?
No.
Okay.
We are not. We are running within NASA networks. We're not exposed to the outside world except for do authentication kinds of things. Perhaps we'll get there, but we're not certified. That sounds terrible. We're not certified to do a thing. No, we are not FedRAMP compliant, is the bottom line.
Okay.
I don't know whether we inherently pick up some certifications. We are working with them within the Code 600 security plan right now with Jeff Simpson, if anybody knows Jeff. So we're security aware, but we have not been tested against any standards.
Because I was going to say that the container security would be, I'd love to know what.
Yeah, the Trojan horse of the container has got a lot of people in it. So yes, we got to, as a group, this is a wonderful group to get to be a part of, by the way. Thank you for inviting us.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming.
We can share knowledge of containers. That would be a lovely thing.
Yeah. Next week's talk should be really good for that. Sorry.
Okay. So the network topology that we have in the prototype, the tenant networks are segregated by VLAN within their own private networks. Access to external networks are provided by NAT through the OpenStack Neutron component. The public IP addresses come from the CEN. That's where we get our interconnect. Neutron provides the user configurable firewall, and VMs can get CEN addresses by associating a floating IP. And then those can be accessible from the internet after a CEN firewall request. We have exactly one IP that is publicly accessible now, running a project. It's Seek, the Seller's Exoplanet.
Engineering, basically a modeling service.
Yes, and so they have one of their models is publicly accessible. Their, I guess, production site is running in GPC now. Access between the CEN and the CNE doesn't require a waiver at the CEN and CNE level. That's been a very common question. We want to use this, but we have to do all the firewall rules. Because we're on the CEN, the CNE trusts the CEN network already. And VMs are connected to the CEN at 10 gigabits currently. We have plans to offer higher speeds than that down the road. Within the VM image repository, we currently have Windows Server 2016 standard images, CentOS 7.4, and Ubuntu 16.04 LTS. And we're planning when Ubuntu 18.04 comes out to add that to the registry. That doesn't mean that you can't import your own VMDK, AMI, QCal2. These are just the ones that we're curating within the platform currently. Why us versus AWS or Azure? We're already within the NASA network boundary, which is a big plus for security. There are no data transfer fees because we're already within the network. There's a theme here. Because it's a NASA product, the GPC team, the huge team that's in the room here, can work directly with you if needed. You don't get that type of support from the commercial vendors. And we're going to have down the road higher speed network options. As I said, we have 10 gigabit connections currently, but we can provide faster down the road, and that's on our roadmap. A few people, we have some projects. We have more since this slide was created. The HESARC, High Energy Astrophysics Science Archive Research Center is one of our users. The SEEK EMAC that I mentioned is our publicly accessible application. The Mini LHR, HelioViewer. We have a couple others who I'm blanking on some of the others that we've added since this slide.
Well, we got the new group potentially coming. We got NEMO.
NEMO, MESA, HFSS. We did some rendering work for the engineering Code 500 with Keyshot. We stood up a rendering farm in GPC for them that was 6 times faster than what they were doing before, just because we could throw so much more hardware at it. So the software, they say, scales linearly based on the number of cores you have to time.
And it's been another common theme in terms of users. We'll count it as users that are running code on their laptop, but there is an ability to run on multiple cores if they could get to more cores.
Right.
So we'll take that application that was running on the laptop, build a Windows VM, and then spawn out solvers or whatever on the background and fire up hundreds of cores potentially for a job that they only have 4 cores on before.
So my question is, what is the hardware? You said you got a lot of hardware from HPC, but what are we talking here? Are we talking, when we can make a VM, are we talking we can make 128 gigabytes with a couple terabytes worth of...
Okay.
Yeah, the basic hypervisor is a dual socket Sandy Bridge, which is an 8-core real core machine. So 16 cores real in a given hypervisor.
Okay.
And we have a mix of upwards of 256 gigabytes on a hypervisor, 128 and probably 64 floating around. So those are the guys that are rolling off our HPC clusters, if you will. What happens with the Discover cluster is it's built on a concept of what we call SCUs, or scalable compute units. We'll buy 500 nodes of the latest, and at the same time we'll roll off 500 nodes of the oldest.
Right.
So the hypervisors we're using within the GPC are on the order of 3 years old. They're not the best HPC machine, but they make pretty good hypervisors. And so that's what we're doing. For the Adapt Cloud, we just bought some 28 core nodes, right? Are they 24? Get whether they're 10 or 12. Anyway, so we're buying that kind of thing for our Adapt system. Sooner or later, we're hoping to buy some state-of-the-art nodes for GPC as well.
Yeah, once GPC takes off and we get kind of the proof of concept proved and start a revenue stream, then we can purchase more hardware, have additional options.
So bottom line, we can give you a VM with 14 real cores. We'll reserve a couple cores probably for the OS, and then give you the bulk of the RAM if you need one big. So 250 gigabytes and 14 cores.
And we've done that for MESA and NEMO. We can create the VM types, the OpenStack calls them flavors. We can customize that on our end to your tenant to have something to pick from or something that matches AWS. We can, it's very flexible for us.
So you're talking about building 32. Upstairs of 32, second floor is InGap, which
we're down in S9.
So how trying to get into InGap is a paperwork nightmare, from what I've heard. How easy is it to get into, getting access to these resources?
If you have NDC credentials, we can have you a VM this afternoon. No, am I wrong?
No, it's really that easy.
Yeah, that is the authentication mechanism, is your NDC. So if you got an email, you got NDC.
Yeah,
No, not if you're living on the Goddard network, you're good to go.
Yeah, if you're outside, VPN will work. In fact, the Mini LHR is a user from University of Maryland, College Park. And they have NASA credentials to get in and use everything. Okay. The value proposition, this wasn't my slide, so I have to read it here for a second.
Make it trust.
Yeah. So partnering with others, we're contributing to additional IT infrastructure and labor and support of the GPC prototype. We're gaining technical expertise between our two codes on this. As we mentioned, the ADAPT 2.0 cluster, which if you have seen outside Building 28, the shipping container, that is an OpenStack installation that Jonathan built. What was the order of that? Was it GPC prototype, then ADAPT 2.0 was built? Mm-hmm. And we're passing lessons learned back and forth between the two projects. We're going to be able to continue to use recycled supercomputing hardware. We just got the SCU9 hardware rolled off. We've got several racks of hardware that are waiting for us to find power tails to connect them. And then we're following the federated governance to think cloud first, and this is hopefully the model that will get us something that works for Goddard and maybe eventually NASA-wide. Some forthcoming things. I mentioned we're going to be adding the multi-building high availability between Building 28 and Building 32. Some reusable cloud services, additional types of block storage for VMs. Currently, we have JBODs. Down the road, we may have something similar to lower tier storage, Glacier-ish, that you could pick from. Obviously, we have to have our billing model. We're putting that together now. Right now, if you get on the prototype now, it's free. But eventually there will be some cost associated. We're going to be, along with that, figuring out service level agreements, uptime requirements, that type of stuff to be production ready. We have IPv6 support on our roadmap. Currently, we only support IPv4, but in the production rollout, we hope to support IPv6. We're also working on a reference model for cloudifying applications. Something that we've seen a lot of is that our users are used to just piling everything in one machine, and then they just get one big VM and they're done, but they're not really taking advantage of the cloud that way. And so we're working with hope to work with one of our users, HelioViewer, to break their application apart into a cloudified model and then use that as a reference for other people coming in. Most of our users are science-based, so they're not always trained software developers.
More like the Lambdas, in the idea of they don't care what's underneath of it, as long as they have the connectivity and the features. Mm-hmm. Or Fargate from what AWS reInvent. They're trying to get more and more abstract, and basically we just want the programs functions as a service, mm-hmm. rather than
right. So the whole serverless thing that Amazon is pushing, where you do everything in Lambda and that type of stuff. This is kind of the steps before that, where for example, HelioViewer has their database, their rendering, and their file system all on one VM, instead of separating out the rendering into different nodes that could be auto-scaled, put the database separate, that type of stuff. So breaking applications up and finding what works best, and then what can be portable to other cloud platforms. So how to do it without relying on a platform-specific feature, unless, like Swift, for example, the S3 equivalent has an S3 equivalent API. So you can write the same API calls that will work in both.
So are you guys like, when you say you're helping to cloudify the application, are you like doing the work? Or are you like coaching the application owners on how to like lay out their architecture? What's
kind of all of that. It'll depend on what level of support that user needs. When we go to the production model, we're looking at having the two tiers of service. A tier where it's just like AWS, you go in, sign in, get your VM, and just go with it. And then there's the next tier up, which is where you get support from our team on adminning your systems, developing your applications to work best with the resources we have. I'm actually a software developer, not a system admin. So I have done some of this before, just not within OpenStack before.
And one more question, the billing model. I know you guys are still working on it, but are there any like ideas? I know there are other similar services where you can spin up VMs really easily, but their model is a little bit bigger. Oh, I'm bigger than what I'm thinking you guys are, your model set up, your billing model. I think they were setting more, you get a certain amount of space in terabytes and a certain amount of compute, and then you can do whatever you want within that area. What is your billing model? What are you guys thinking your billing, ladies? What do you ladies think your billing model?
Can we just say geeks?
Yeah.
We're nerds. Nerds is gender neutral. So what you described sounds kind of like the model would be like a package where you say I get 15 cores, 100 gigs of RAM, 5 terabytes of storage, and if I use it, great. If I don't, okay. But as long as you stay within that, you pay the same rate, kind of like a cell phone plan.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
That isn't the direction we're currently heading, right? Because we're more modeling an AWS approach at the moment, for lack of a better thing. But actually, that team meets Monday. This notion of corralling a bunch of assets and then you carve it up how you want is an interesting thought. I'll certainly take that forward.
Yeah, that
plan.
Yeah,
and OpenStack per tenant, we can set up quotas that would match what you bought.
But that data will expire after 6 months. So we go to the full price.
Yeah, there's no rollover. There's no rollover. You pay up front. You sign in blood. That type of thing.
Don't we already?
Yeah.
Come up with some kind of like a weekly stable.
That question.
That you can provide every single service and show how much it will cost if you choose.
Yes, we'll have. We're going to have one model at least then that is similar to how Amazon does it, where you pay per compute hour, that type of thing, right? And then this could be a simpler option where they just.
Well, I think you got a question over there.
Yes.
So I think I'm jumping on what Andre was trying to get at. It seems like you guys are definitely geared towards like the science community and things that are quick ramp up initiatives, maybe experimental type environments where you can ramp up something quickly and by a smaller segment. But we're planning from a division standpoint too, where they're looking at allocation and data housing maybe across a larger one, and they're looking for stable billing of this is what I want to expect to pay per month. But it seems like for a lot of things we're looking at doing like ramp up small applications, test trials, and things like that. That's where like this ramp up and more like an AWS pricing model makes sense in that budgeting criteria. You know, I rely a lot on Andre with this, with pricing models that we've been looking at for divisions and all, and it's different. But if we're trying to do experimental things, sometimes it doesn't make sense for us to be in a huge pricing model because we're trying to do a proof of concept, not to do here's the 5-year architecture plan for what we're looking at going in down the road.
Right. Yeah. So maybe we have both models available based on what you need.
Yeah, I personally just ran an RFI where home job was looking to push some of our data offsite into the cloud. So we looked at the Googles, the Microsofts, the AWSs in terms of what would be a long-term pricing model if we were to shove 50 terabytes out of it, 50 petabytes rather, in terms of getting that data and housing our data long-term. You quickly come to find that you can cut the exact kind of deals I think you were talking about. Well, if you'll guarantee some usage over some period of time, we'll write you a special contract for that usage and get away from their web-based pricing model.
Yeah, but
so I think at the end of the day, both of them are going to have their applications.
Yeah, I think that the niche here is, like I said, when we spoke, we already have a model where we can spin up a lot of VMs inside of this area, but like Tara was pointing out, if we wanted to spin up a proof of concept somewhere else, outside of the project that we're already dealing with, then there's no real easy way for us to do that. And I think that's a niche that can easily, you guys can fill and really and fill a gap there.
Yeah, but you want it to be an aggressive pricing strategy. I'm sensing.
I want it to be free, but
that's aggressive. That's aggressive.
So what you guys have, what what a lot of people are saying. It's a test area. Are you guys looking for being able to be accessed from the outside? Because it sounds like this would be great if we built the containers, developed it on your stuff, and then moved it over to AWS after we're ready for it. Trying to save.
Yeah, I think the answer is, Alicia, we're going to have some level of authentication coming in, right, Don? It'll be a two-factor. If your VM does live on the internet, you'll still two-factor into it. I would imagine. You know, right?
There's going to be agency security requirements.
Right.
That's the thing,
Yeah.
no matter what.
I guess what I'm trying to find out is what 1.0, I'm assuming is the public version, or when it goes completely, when
The production. Yes.
How far out is that?
What is that? It's
You know, 6 months.
26 months.
Pick a number
Yeah.
Somewhere on that order. I guess we're here to gather this kind of feedback. So if there's things that, yeah, you like what you're hearing, but it's got to be able to do this to really satisfy me, send the emails. You know, we're very influenceable at this stage. We may or may not be able to get there, but we like to hear what you want. But I mean, when you say you want direct access, what do you want? You want at least want to use keys, I hope.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. What I'm trying to say is that if I'm developing something for the cloud, then I want to be able to say, okay, now our users can have access to it. Not just, oh, it's only if you're sitting inside this.
Sure, okay.
You're sitting within the building.
You want non-NASA users?
Well, so
That can happen.
Here's the thing you have to realize is that the default security posture of the SIN, the Science and Engineering Network,
Oh, I know that
is site only. And that is in a sense our upstream network provider. So our default security posture is the SIN's default security posture.
Okay.
If you want something accessible to the world, then the gateway is not us. The gating factor is the SIN. You'll have to negotiate a firewall policy with the SIN.
Right. And we did that for the one app.
We did that for Seek.
And Seek is a publicly accessible website right now.
Okay.
So we can negotiate with the same people.
Didn't you ever get FedRAMP to open that up?
No.
No, I
And
think
this was
FedRAMP is
already
more so
living on
for
Goddard server and just moved over.
FedRAMP is more so for services that are like they're housed outside of NASA, and then NASA is trying to, or the government is trying to use those services, so they need to be FedRAMP certified, as I understand it. Right.
So
FedRAMP is more along the lines of, like you're saying, you hitting the point in the right direction. You build something and you want external users, the government to say, hey, for everybody outside of us, we offering this to you, then you need to be FedRAMP certified.
That's different
If
from what I
you're
thought.
internal NASA, internal NASA, you can get away from not being FedRAMP certified as long as it's in. As soon as you make it a public offering, and here's a solution to like you need to go through.
Is the SEN the same thing as CNE?
they're two different networks.
So you have, what's the hierarchy? Is it SEN is the same level as CNE? So if you want to make something on SEN public, is that just a matter of applying for the SEN firewall, or does it go through the CNE?
I think
Just the SEN firewall, I think.
I think so, yes. But I think that if you're on the SEN, you can get to the CNE, or people in the CNE can get to you without a firewall, is my understanding.
Mhm.
Right, but I mean, yeah, I got that part, but I was asking like, if you want to make it.
And if I can respond to this, lady, I'm sorry to catch your name.
Tara.
Hi, I'm Jonathan. I hear what you're saying, and I'm interested in sort of your case and your use case and billing model. That's useful feedback, and I think at this stage there's a possibility of influencing what the billing model could become, or at least maybe creating a billing model that suits your use case. But we might need to hear your input at some of our organizational meetings, right?
I would say from standpoints too is consider the long-term use of the data. From a 400 standpoint, you know, when a mission goes into operations, we're talking about long-term data storage and things like that. You know, one of the projects they're working on data storage right now has data back to the 1960s. We're talking about, you know, a huge set of data that we're transferring and turning into a digital, you know, thing there, but it's also like every project that's launching after the first year of operations, all their data gets transferred over that. So like large storage items from our division standpoint and what we're looking at. However, doesn't need from, if we ramped up a new version of an application, we wouldn't want, you know, an environment for us to be able to ramp it up and to show cloud capabilities and that kind of aspect versus our kind of standard operation. Like our division is very long term.
So let me so they can follow. So I know she's talking about a different billing model, but assume that the simplest scenario is, well, let's just say we know what the cost is per CPU per minute or however you calculate it, and then the storage and the memory. Technically, you can extrapolate that and say, hey, I need X number of CPU.
We're able to get our sizes and we're able to do it, and we're looking for the long, steady state costing structure for that because.
But could you assume that I need X number
You can, unless anomalies happen on flight. And then you're talking about user and data transfer. That's why we weren't looking at Amazon Web Services for our data hosting, was because of if we have an anomaly on flight for a satellite that's in orbit right now, the use case and data transfer that could happen from the file size and what we're looking at. We literally are looking from files from 1967. And the amount of research and stuff that we're doing from that standpoint, or what that's going to look like from an application and need and data stream standpoint, it just doesn't make sense to us. We're looking for a stable memory for that. But that being said, what we're looking at for the future for our data architecture and mapping of applications is completely different. And we need to be able to have something that's agile in that kind of way of being able to say, here's a proof of concept of how we can be better in the future, but we can't be taking away what we're doing there. We need to be able to show them the future versus their stable operations now.
Do you guys have a concept of long-term storage versus short-term storage?
Well, that's what I was we are not currently architected to be the sole owner, the sole copy of the data. And that's what this is sounding like. I know what we know what those architectures look like, but that's not what we have in place right now. Yeah. So we want 15 nines worth of, you know, storage case, right?
Back up multiple copies.
That's what I was gonna ask.
I mean,
and then like we have redundancy, even if government shut down, redundancy requirements and all this kind of stuff that exists in our network and data storage facilities and access. So like we have ISO security.
Well, there's others asking for the same thing you are asking for.
Yeah.
Those other guys, yeah.
But there's other things that Andre and I work on from like proof of concept standpoint that is the future. You know, what we're looking at and how can we ramp up those kinds of things without having the weightiness of a division data management.
So if I could throw out an idea, then the role that I play in all of this as a systems administrator is really sort of wrangling the networking. It is networking as a service, and it can be as flexible as the agency will allow me to make it. For me, it's just a VLAN tag. If I can tag, you know, all the way through the series of switches between you and me, then I can give you a VM that is adjacent to the data from your point of view. If code 400 works with me to make that happen, it's not a problem for me.
I think that ties into a question I had as well. To bring up these like elastic workloads, that sort of thing, part of the problem, I think we talked about this internally in our other meeting, was how do you get the right IPs and all the paperwork through 700? I know half of you guys are 700, half of you are 600. That's been a barrier for us to automate certain parts of things. I think you guys worked it out in 500, right?
Well, we have a team that just had one that.
Yeah. So I know that we talked, I think the way you guys explained it when we met the other time, it's like you have your load balancer and you can fire up as many things inside of that internal network as you need to satisfy that need or whatever. But if you did need to have each one of those things, for whatever reason, accessible via their own IPs from the outside, maybe if we, since you guys are half like 600, half 700, you're probably going to be a big player in the whole thing. If you start to modernize, help modernize some of the 700 practices, like we shouldn't have to fill out a paper to actually.
Well, no. You don't have to convince me on that front.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
The reason I don't think that the DNS is going to work is because NASA doesn't have a dynamic DNS infrastructure. They want you to fill out, 2 to 3 pages of paperwork just to get one DNS name, and it's totally ridiculous, and I laugh at it. I could get you a dynamic DNS to your VM if NASA would let me push an update to. They won't.
So I guess maybe you guys know the right people. So I guess the question is, how do we get that message up to the people that can actually make a decision on it, or different. So like, just because you did it 20 years ago and that worked doesn't mean it's like the way to go now.
I think if some of the stakeholders our Goddard Private Cloud organizational meetings and express these concerns to the managers in codes 600 and 700 who are trying to make decisions about things like billing. They need this input to make the right decisions.
Well, those of you that are with 700 now, have you been able to reach out to some of the higher ups at all? I mean, what kind of strategy or luck are you having there?
Gazelle and I are the ones that are here from 700, and we both started specifically for this project. So we kind of pretty much know the 600 people best. But we do have contact with the ITCD. That's where our contract is. That's where our primary task orders are. So we can talk to those people. We can talk to the data center managers, Bill Truxton, Todd Spencer. Todd comes to our GPC meetings that Jonathan was saying. Those are the managers that come that we need to help influence to modernize things. And then they have to influence up as well, up to the center CIO.
Would it help if we kind of like, because the use cases for GPC are there, but there's a bunch of other use cases I'm pretty sure everyone in the room has them as well. So it's the same requirement in multiple places, but we're all saying it individually. If we got together and said it together as like a collective, maybe it would be heard.
That would be helpful.
We would help broker that as best we can. Like Mike said, we do have what we believe very good and honest participation from the manager sense on both 600 and 700. They want to see this succeed. So we're looking for this kind of input that you have on it.
Cool.
So
how are you guys going? Because I know there's like several different initiatives, would be the better term right now, dealing with cloud. Because I know you guys, and there's the other initiative, that's the commercial cloud. There's another issue, instance or initiative dealing with high processing, which is the ACME. Are you guys talking to each other on what it is you're trying to offer and or structure yourselves similar so that the different representatives like sitting here at the table know where their data is? Because right now, like I'm from 710 and I get bits and pieces from all these different initiatives, and it's like
we are trying. And trying is the operative word, to corral all these different interests together and come up with one view into cloud. It's our personal view that we're going to the cloud. We're all going to the cloud. And you can say you're not going to end up in the cloud, but there's going to be a lot of work that's going to be in the cloud. But we believe there's always going to be an on-premise need as well. So we're working within 600, but we're also working with 700. We're working with others to present this pane of glass where cloud resources is a portfolio. It's AWS, Azure, Google. It's on-site Adapt. It's GPC. And said BME may be in there. But help the user, whoever that user may be, understand what the portfolio looks like and help him or her, that gender neutral person, find the right place to spin up their instance and do the work. So yes, we are starting to collaborate and try to detangle what to the most people around here must seem very confusing in terms of where should they do it.
And we are working with the AMCE folks. We have a monthly meeting with them, and they actually sit right down the hall from us.
That group has since transferred. If you're talking about the AIST managed cloud environment, that group has now been assumed into our group.
Yeah, they're part of us.
Yeah, so.
But
That whole Mike Little AWS offering is now managed by Dan Duffy, my boss.
So if we could probably, would help too as well, if we can get everyone, like I found out about you guys through Matt. But we didn't know you guys existed before Matt brought it up. And I think a lot of times you just, like you mentioned, you hear this place, you hear that place, but you don't know about the things you don't know about. If we can kind of maybe, I'll try to find somewhere we can just post something and everyone can just contribute to it, all the instances that they know about. That way we can help figure out all the players, and the players can figure out who else is in the same arena as well, and collaborate that way.
This is sound corny, but we're trying to do this for you.
Yeah, something.
We really are. We're not, this isn't for us.
it's not an academic exercise.
Right. So it's got to be.
You guys are our potential customers.
You know, it is a prototype. If it falls flat on its face because there is some use case, okay, we've learned something. But right now we think we have a use case, and we're trying to flesh this out.
That's actually one thing I was wondering. This storage thing was tried a few years ago, and I understand it was a flop because they couldn't meet the costs for the.
I was personally one of the testers. It was unfortunately billed to a certain extent as an HPC service, and with 10 gigabit interfaces, it performed like a 1 gigabit HPC resource, and it just was overbilled, oversold, and it just never took off.
What are you doing to get around that?
We're running two high-speed 10 gigabit networks. We're running, actually OpenStack, as Mike mentioned, was the code that was running back 5 to 3 years as part of the Nebula East-West.
Just a quick question, just to devil's advocate. What happens with the data centers who are already, handling this stuff, the SAs, the DBAs, all those folks? What happens to those personnel? They're already handling 700 and the smaller codes in 700 and stuff like that.
We need you.
Going in the cloud. So there is potential for pulling in this personnel?
OpenStack is infrastructure as a service.
Yeah.
SAs handle infrastructure. So we still need you. We might be giving you virtualized resources, but the 4 of us can't handle all of your needs. We can't take over your stuff, and that isn't our goal, believe me.
So patching, OS updates.
Yeah, no, we're not. We can't do all that for you. We need your SAs.
And I would say from a customer standpoint, that's something that people don't understand, that they think that if they go virtual, that there's no SA or DB. I'm just saying, from somebody who has to explain this to people, it's like, no, you still need SAs, you still need DBs. All we're doing is elevating the ability to provide high-speed services and sharing the cost of that infrastructure. But all we're doing with this, it doesn't mean support isn't necessary. All you're doing is doing hosting.
Yeah, support changes.
That's under an infrastructure as a service model, right? You could provide a platform as a service model on top of OpenStack using one of the platform models. Which, by the way, there's a question earlier about migrating to AWS or another cloud. Much easier to migrate if you have a platform as a service where you can take a build back and migrate it onto one of the other services. Have you looked at providing a platform as a service option, which would take away all the patching requirements, all the IT security requirements?
Yeah, that's a big thing.
I brought that up earlier. Because there are still some things that you have to do, even when you go all the way up to software as a service. There is going to be some organizational level controls that you still have to meet as a user of that service. You won't totally get out. And that's some of the.
I understand the government. I doubt you're ever going to get out of all your process, right? But you can segment it so that a lot of the common processes.
Right, you will inherit a lot more, but there. And like I said, I provide input with some of the other initiatives that not only learned from you guys through some of the other initiatives. So, but I know I've dealt quite a bit right now with the commercial cloud people that's going through trying to do a proof of concept now. Now, one of the things that I expressed to them is something that we're trying to do. If they are successful, is to be able to provide to the customers, you guys, a set baseline to where, hey, if you want this, you get this, but here's what you have to meet from a security standpoint. This is all you have to meet from a security standpoint, because you're going to inherit everything else. So that's what we're trying to do. That's the reason why I'm asking. Are you guys talking across board? Because right now, from what I'm hearing, you got, it's going to be some competition amongst trying to get
Well,
all these
so-
customers to.
Competition is good.
It's
That's why
good
AWS
in
most
a
like
way,
sense.
but bad in another when it's internal.
Yeah.
So it is not the goal of the GPC to replace your systems administrator. I think the cloud first strategy is to try to prevent everybody from buying their own physical servers and trying to maintain that and deal with that cost, is because it's much more efficient to lump all the servers in one place and carve it up virtually and hand it out to people in infrastructure as a service. In terms of,
You can apply that same argument to the next level later. So that there's lots of redundancy that happens in terms of managing IT security plans, managing, all these sorts of things, patches that you can combine into a platform as a service. You're gonna get the same thing. I think that is part of the federated cloud.
I see the value of platform as a service. It is probably more than this team can handle alone, unless we expand rapidly.
But I think a number of the questions you're hearing in the room, and it's sort of my reason I came today, but who looks at it strategically as to what you should be going for? I understand that you're from bottoms up are seeing a lot of need from your infrastructure as a service, but maybe the best thing for the center is for you to provide a platform as a service architecture. And that's what the center should be asking you to do. So is there somebody from the top down, not necessarily you as GPC going out and talking to people you think might be related to you, but somebody coming from top down saying, hey, here are all the different computing, cloud-based computing infrastructure on site and how do we know which ones, how do we actually carve them up and strategically think about it?
That's a good point, but at the same time, we have to be concerned about top-down stuff. That's when you get like Launchpad, where you can't throw it an API because you have to have this thing that you go in and click in, right? We have.
I'd argue that single sign-on is a good.
No,
good
it
goal.
is. The implementation is the problem, right?
We do
So
have a government lead. It was Phil Webster from Phil Webster. He's since retired. Right now, Ted Masawoka is our government lead, who's at least trying to fulfill that role you're speaking of. Now, whether it's beyond that or more than it can handle, we'll see. But your point is well taken. This needs to be. There's got to be a Goddard view.
It sounded like it's going to be your next logical step, anyways. Once you have.
Yeah.
The next step, it's like, okay, now you have all these machines, but I just want to run an application. I don't want that.
That's what I said. It sounds like y'all
Yes.
can be competing against each other.
On the 700 items.
Okay, please.
Not techie, but I care deeply about communication. Can anybody answer if the following people are aware of or in this group? Fred Duca, Marianne Vance.
Fred Duca. Yes. Marianne, I was on the phone with Fred Duca this morning working on IPv6 problem.
Thank you, Andre, for actually putting this on Dateline. I'm one of the nerdy people who actually reads Dateline. I saw the word cloud, and I'm like, I run our speaker series, and we're looking for topics. So
I know you're paying.
we might be able to help each other. I'll talk to you after that. I'll email you later about that. But I'm not the only one who knows there's these different clouds floating around there, and sort of what they need and how they're different. So I sit across the hall from Fred, but he's already plugged in. But I can facilitate if you want to get the right people in the room together to talk. This is a good time. We're in the mode where we're developing the cost schedules and all the requirements that people want. So how can I help?
You can make that happen.
Well, I need your help. Give me the names of it. I mean, I know part of the names, but I obviously didn't know you guys existed.
And so
You just saw pizza coming in.
I follow my nose.
I can be a funnel point. But if everyone can send me what they know of, I'll try to aggregate it and then send it over to you.
Yeah,
Everyone should have
So can I respond to the gentleman beside Tara?
Right before you respond, let's do this one last thing. So
Adapt
we usually
2.0
end around
does.
one. We're like 1:20 now because everyone's really engaged in this. I just want to make sure everyone knows. We have the room until 2. So it's fine if you want to hang out and ask questions. We'll skip the game and just talk about this all the rest of the time. But if you did have to leave, then don't feel like you can't just get up and walk out. The conversation continue as you're going, but just to let everybody know. Thanks everybody for coming out. Did everyone sign the sign-in sheet?
PowerPoint to cover.
I think
I'm at the end. Yep.
Oh, yeah, did we even finish the slides?
Yeah, I think we're.
We did. There's just one.
There is one important point. That last bullet is meaningful.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, cloud bursting,
Oh, I like that.
so you can push stuff up to the commercial clouds if your needs scale beyond what GPC has at the moment. This is another planned feature down the road.
Yeah, we are working with a company called Cycle Computing, which allows you to basically run job schedules both on your on-prem cloud and your off-premise cloud. And if you outstrip your local resources, you can have your application automatically migrate up into AWS or Azure or something like that. So that is a coming technology that's in works right now.
Is there a GPC website for more information?
Your previous point
We should have that. We don't
on,
yet.
explaining how to cloudify the applications, I would actually say is something that not only needs to be considered from a developer standpoint, but from a procurement standpoint. Working with someone who purchased an application to do something and it's not meant to be housed on virtual servers. The entire structure of the application is literally not working because they are expecting a single server environment locally hosted, and they literally purchased an expensive product for this. Not like you purchased it not thinking in current day, not let alone the future. So the communication too of getting that IT card, you guys could be very good about leading the pack on that communication overall from that procurement standpoint. And I think it's really big as people keep buying new and new tools to solve their problems, that they aren't thinking about that. And that part of your components is really key. So make sure that you guys are
So,
thanks for that feedback.
If a commercial vendor is selling a product that they say cannot run in a VM, I would say, what are they doing wrong?
Oh, no. This is not the software itself. This is the license. If I buy Jira, you pick server, cloud, whatever, blah, blah.
Yeah.
When I buy it, when I procure that, I need to know which.
So I run Jira in a VM.
Whether I can or not, it's a licensing agreement. Like, are you violating a license agreement by running it in a way that you
Oh,
can
they know
purchase?
this application that they bought literally cannot run that way.
That's not
They
an
pay
issue.
way too much money for an application that
So-
was
That's a
designed,
bad
like, it was designed like 10 years ago in 2000.
Different
And
So-
I was like, why did you buy this?
Let me just say that there is no way to run Jira in a supported configuration at NASA. I have experienced this firsthand because you have to put it behind Launchpad, which is a proxy. And Atlassian is not supporting its product running behind the proxy. Period. They just won't.
Does it have a SAML integration?
It doesn't.
So that's why I mentioned with the, like, we gotta be careful with that. The idea was great. Like, oh, we have single sign-on. This is great. But the implementation was like, what the hell?
Yes.
It's not as simple as.
No, it breaks APIs. Like, you can't, unless you're an end user, the whitelisted list of other like applications that are going to speak to you, it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah, no, the only way that I have my Jira and Confluence working is that I literally go into my VM's Etsy host file and tell the VM that its host name is Launchpad. Right? Yeah, so I fake it out.
Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, GPC. Appreciate you guys.
So we're actually like interested in potentially being a user of this. Who do we